Welcome to the broadcast, my dears. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have been making absolute exhibition of themselves at some vulgar charity exhibition with Kevin Costner, and I'm going to get into that in a moment. But first of all, I want to address another moment of vulgarity that I do not think should disappear into the shadows, because I picked up on it, and it is something that you wouldn't have seen with the late Elizabeth. It was a moment in France, wonderful trip to France, we've spoken about this, lovely state visit. But this encounter happened at Paris Saint-Germain. It was the president of that football club, Nasser Al-Khelaifi, and he decided to hold up a football shirt. This was at the Rugby World Cup village, Saint-Denis, with Qatar Airways all over it and Charles III emblazoned on the back. Now, I'm not humorless. I understand that it was a gift, it was a gesture from the club. What I don't appreciate is having it dangled in front of the king as if he is there as some sort of billboard to plaster and paint either Qatar Airways or the football club or some association with the president of this football club. It's vulgar. And I mean, seriously, can you imagine that being dangled in front of the late Queen Elizabeth? Do you think she would have been pleased with that? Well, the thing is that they know that she wouldn't have been pleased with that, so they wouldn't have attempted doing it. I expect, knowing my luck, someone will draw my attention to something like that happening. Well, I'm not aware of anything like that similar happening, and if it did, it certainly went under my radar. I just don't appreciate it in this day and age, because it is throwing daylight on magic. It is that kind of thing. I accept some relaxing of royal behaviour in the wake of the late Elizabeth's death. This is a new era, a less deferential one. I accept some of it, but not all of it, and not all of the protocol should disappear. And I'm afraid this is what happens. We all like seeing how warm and engaging and accepting new royalty are. But there are those of us that do continually urge some restraint, because you end up with characters like this chancing their luck. You know, I know it might sound rather humourless, but I'm afraid I don't have much sense of humour over this kind of thing, because it cheapens royalty and it distracts from some of the magic, and it feels like almost like a sort of vulgar hijacking. You would see this sort of intrepid movement from him, holding up it looked like he was holding up his laundry, my dear, his dirty laundry in front of the king. And the king did look a little bit ambushed, I have to say. I don't know if he knew this was going to happen. But he should have taken a leaf out of the Queen's handbook and swatted away the pest. Swatted away the pest like that wasp that she saw. But I think the same things all the time. It is a fine balance. When the Prince and Princess of Wales out the other day, no, it was the Princess of Wales something, and I was watching the footage, and it's so polite and lovely, and all the comments say, aren't they lovely? They go around and give their time to everyone. But she joined a table and she went around every hand, perhaps 12 hands, and every time, very nice to meet you, very nice to meet you, very nice to meet you, very nice to meet you. And I realised that the late Queen also shook a hell of a lot of hands. I do. But she seemed to manage a lot of these public engagements and encounters with showing a bit more restraint, not quite so much accessibility. And yes, it brings out the warm fuzzies when I see people leaping up to the king and give the odd kiss on the cheek, taking selfies with William. Of course it does. But my big point has always been, watch that path, because that path is a slope, and it is a slippery one. Because you give an inch, they want a mile. So it's not that I am so cold and frosty that I can't understand the charm in it. It is that I have the logic to be able to see where the present is going to end up in the future. And I'm afraid that if they're not careful, you'll end up in Sussex territory. You'll end up in cloud cuckoos. You'll end up writing on bananas and on Oprah. There are consequences in this world. Consequences. The world is made up of consequences. But that's just my little dramatic word of caution for the courtiers and advisors and any influential voices that might be watching, because they do watch. And if you want to see a tawdry cabaret in action, well, we saw one. Because Rachel Ragland, or Rachel Zane, appeared as Rachel Moran. Rachel Moran takes to the stage for Bodyguard 2. We heard there was a sequel coming up, didn't we? And there were all sorts of rumours about Meghan's involvement and Kevin Costner. Well, from Whitney to Shitney, because she arrived on stage as a special guest, my dear. Star billing at Kevin Costner's extravaganza. They were the surprise guests at the 1805 Live. They appeared on a $26 million polo field belonging to Mr. Costner on his Oceanside estate. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer said, please give a warm welcome to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Well, you can't really boo people at a charity event, can you, when they've been encouraged to welcome them in that way? So they emerged to a few cheers. And, well, as for what she was wearing now, I did, when she first emerged, I did giggle to myself, and I thought, what is that? Some sort of campfire blanket. You know, let's sit around the fire and all sing Ginganguli in our blankets. You know, I did have a slight snigger, but I would be lying to you if I said that it didn't grow on me. And I love it. I really like it, even with those sort of spindly arms sticking out a bit. It's very like this. It's like, you know, the Fraggles or the Muppets, those puppets that had the arms on the strings sort of appearing out there. This is her new look, isn't it? I'm kind of humble. I'm humble and gamine, and I just have the spindly arms sticking out. Yes. And although it sounds like I'm disparaging her spindly arms, I've got spindly arms, my dear. So, you know, it's the same. Well, I say spindly. I'm tall and thin. For those that don't know, I'm 6'1", just over 6'1", and I'm thin. And it wouldn't be to many of your tastes, I'm afraid. I'm on the skinny side. I'm on the skinny side. Cute bum, but I'm skinny. I've got very slim arms and slim legs, and they do kind of pop out and look a bit spindly on occasion. So, well, if I wanted to fatten up, I would. If I wanted to bulk up, then I would, but I don't. I like being tall and slim. But I rather like that sort of bougie look. It's rather shishi with that cape effect. You know, the friend that I speak to you often about, the one that lives in LA, well, let me pronounce this right, I always get it wrong. Los Feliz. Yes, Los Feliz. The one who was a very good friend. She actually reminds me a little of Meghan sometimes, both physically and in the expressions and stuff. There is a world of difference though, because my friend is an absolute beauty, not only of character, but physically too. A professional beauty, my dear. But she does have certain looks in common with Meghan from time to time. And I thought of her when I saw her in this sort of big cape affair, because she will sometimes, especially in the winter months when she's here in the kingdom, she will wear a beautiful vintage coat with a cape. And it put me a little bit in mind of that sort of, you know, when you're feeling sort of, it's shrugged on and you're feeling cosy. You know that I like the autumn, my dear. It's sort of seasonal. So I rather liked the cape style, the high funnel neck, the tie waist and the herringbone pattern. This charity event was to raise money for local first responders. Now, perhaps you could sell your $26 million polo field, Mr. Costner. That might help a few out. Job done, eh? I'm sure it's all very nice. All very nice. Very self-congratulatory though, isn't it, with all these celebrities buzzing around, very pleased with themselves. They were introduced as special guests. Why are they special? What have they done? Harry's not the special one. That would be his brother, the heir to the throne. Meghan? Well, she's special in the way that we're all special. You know, we're all creatures of the divine, if you wish to see it that way. But okay, she was a suitcase girl on Wheel of Fortune or whatever it was. Oh, very clever. Very clever. They like awards, don't they, these celebrities? They love receiving awards, whereas the rest of us might feel a bit bashful about it. I'd stay clear of all these ceremonies, but they love receiving awards, being told how great they are. And that seems to apply to Kevin Costner as well, who said, "Good afternoon, everyone. I get asked a lot by my friends who have no manners, Kev, what's this place cost? What's its worth? I can just simply tell you, on a day like today, it's worth every penny. It's worth every penny of this place. $26 million. How vulgar." I have nothing against Kevin Costner. I don't know anything about him. What movies have I seen? The Bodyguard. I don't think I even really saw that other one, Dances with Wolves. I'm sure he's okay, but sounds a little bit full of himself, if you ask me, judging by that. Prince Harry was all in black. Oh, watch out. Guilty feet have got no rhythm. Giving George Michael vibes, or an attempt at such a thing, don't you think? Oh, so suave, Harold. All in black like the milk tray man. So suave. So chic. Get a buzz cut. Get a buzz cut. That Dandelion affair is ruining the look. But you've had worse days. Costner is undergoing a costly divorce, isn't he, my dear? 145 million is his compound alone. His compound up the road. He's having a divorce, isn't he, from the Christine Baumgartner. We have a Baumgartner in the fruit basket that watches. Joanna Baumgartner, television presenter and very well-connected woman. And very knowledgeable about all fineries and things. Is a basketeer who will be watching today. I wonder if she's related to you, my dear, Christine Baumgartner. Well, Meghan's makeup is being described as minimal. Actually, it's full glam, but just a little bit more subtly applied. I see the lip liner. I see maybe a lash going on there, I'm not sure. And that's fine. That's fine. Some women lots of makeup, some don't. And I certainly have no problem with that. What I didn't like is the way that she pushed Harry up to Costner at one point as Harry was going forward. She sort of pushes him as he walks past, as if he needs coaxing. Constant reinforcement, like Mummy encouraging her toddler son up to the stage for his first nativity, playing little donkey. To the Virgin Mary, no doubt. Archetypes axed. Well, we all know it was axed back in June, don't we, my dear? No renewal. Well, now she's withdrawn her bid to protect the name archetypes. All those applications that were made to the US Office of Patents and Trademarks. No, done with all of that. So that was an abject failure. What archetype is this? Which archetype does this fall under, Meghan? Hot mess? Hot mess. The visit to France wound up with a lovely day in Bordeaux. And Queen Camilla was highly praised. Well, they've both been highly praised for their conduct during the state visit. President Macron has taken some heat for his handsy nature around the king. He's rather like Meghan in that respect, isn't he? But Queen Camilla has been receiving particular praise for her style in her winter season. The king looked cool in sunglasses, and the Queen wore a Burberry trench over powder blue. That was a gorgeous colour, wasn't it, that coat dress? Powder blue. They joined a reception on board HMS Iron Duke, highlighting defence ties between the kingdom and France. They got to sample some plonk and had a good old glug, and they had a good old sniff and chew of some fromage. They took a tram ride through the cities, and Camilla was pretty in blue jewels to the lobe. There were vast crowds everywhere that were thrilled to see their Majesties. But no hairnet. Lieutenant Colonel Thompson made a splash and kept a protective eye over proceedings. Pebble Critter says, I thought Camilla looked better than I've ever seen her. I love the soft pink on her, and yes, what beautiful legs she has. She does have nice legs, doesn't she? We got to have that glimpse. I wonder if they've ever been seen before. Probably some photos somewhere, but that gust of wind Really showed off the wares, didn't it? And that gorgeous blue number with the cape, it just flowed beautifully with her hair. There was a real softness to her, quite the contrast to Madame Macron. Not saying she was harsh, just a very different look. Well, one thing that I forgot to mention in the last broadcast was Madame Macron's hair. She has the most colossal amount of hair, doesn't she? I'm not sure her exact age. Has she gone from autumn to winter yet? She's in one of those seasons. And she still has a colossal amount of hair. It reminds me, you'll find some drag queen, I'll pile up headbands from time to time, dear, and layer them. But some drag queens will pile up their wigs and hair pieces, one on top of the other, such as Lady Bunny. They pile them on top of each other. That's what she looked like, my dear. She could donate 4/5 of that stuff, couldn't she? So hirsute. Hirsute women are a stereotype of France, though, aren't they? I am aware that it's just a stereotype. Any French fruits that might be watching, I know some very sleek and smooth French ladies, and glamorous ones, but it is famously the home of hairy armpits, natural armpits, shall we say, and other exotic regions. Perhaps it was this kind of fecundity that the young Emmanuel Macron was drawn to when he was just a young schoolboy, wasn't he? The young adolescent Manuel, when he began dating the First Lady of France, as she was to become. Wasn't he 15 and she was 40? Something like that. Well, maybe he'd never seen that sort of hair before in those sort of vast quantities, if the collars matched the cuff. So that would have been some sort of revelation, wouldn't it? He would have had to have borrowed some of Prince William's waders that he was using in the River Hudson the other day to get through that entanglement. Well, it's a good thing to have so much hair, to have a good head of hair, but I do prefer it on her up, because it just swings, doesn't it, when it all hangs. There's so much of it, it just swings forward, and it does take on a slightly bizarre appearance, I must say. The Princess Royal is somebody who knows how to wear her hair. You will never catch her hair flapping around in a breeze. It doesn't matter if she steps off of an aeroplane in force 100 breezes and cyclones and whirlwinds, or she's getting blown out of Kansas to Oz. That wire brush of hair will remain whipped up into some sort of perfect confection on the head. And that is exactly how it was in Liverpool, as she joined the Jaguar Land Rover factory and took a tour of the facility, meeting with staff. Wasn't she delicious there with that beaming, winning smile, inherited from her late mum? Grey check jacket she wore, with matching skirt and black knee-highs. Dark gloves and kinky boots, they really help to almost lend a fetishistic sort of edge to the traditional country wear. I love that blend. It gives it a real modern edge, doesn't it, my dear? With the elegant silk scarf to add that sensuous, tactile element, and ruby lips. Lovely. Really, really lovely. The lapel was like a juicy cut of beef steak trimmed in mustard. And her former beau, her ex-husband, Captain Mark Phillips, oh so handsome captain, turned 75 years old today, so he has just progressed from autumn to the winter season. But their friendship and bond remains evergreen. As a follow-up to the subject of Russell Brand, I received so many comments and fabulous comments, and whether you loved or loathed Russell Brand, all the fruits in the basket, were in complete agreement that it is very sinister when a country begins attacking somebody who has not been convicted or even charged with a crime. And you agreed with my sentiments that we need to get back to innocent until proven guilty, even if you have a hunch, even if you've been persuaded so far. If somebody is legally and lawfully innocent, they must not be treated as criminals and be subject to this cancel culture and mob culture, which is ever more encroaching, ever more present upon us. And we hear that Dame Caroline Dinenage has been interfering and meddling on behalf of Parliament to take Mr. Brand down. And as I've made clear already, I don't like Russell Brand. I don't enjoy his content. I have absolutely no affection for Russell Brand. But I'm not defending him, and I'm certainly not suggesting that I know whether or not he is innocent or guilty of crimes that have been claimed by the anonymous people on the Dispatch's broadcast. I have absolutely no idea. It's not about defending him, but it is about defending human rights. Wendy Gillard says, "Hi River, I am not a fan of Russell Brand either. However, I do not think it is fair of the public media or organisations he is associated with to assume he is guilty until he is legally proven guilty. Here, here." And some people have even been quoting, I don't know if this is true or if it's a bit dramatic, but they're quoting one of the few clauses of the Magna Carta that is still in effect today, a violation of those clauses. Now, I say this with some reluctance because I didn't know much about Caroline Dinenage. Her father, Fred Dinenage, is a known broadcaster and reporter. He retired a couple of years ago, I think. But very lovely man. Very lovely man by all accounts, Fred Dinenage. She comes from a lovely family. There must be aspects of her that are very lovely. So I do say this with some reluctance, not knowing anything about the gal. But I do know enough because she has signed off this sinister, hideous letter. I know enough to know that this is a hideous, hideous atrocity, this letter that she's written. It is so, to be honest with you, my dears, because I have a lot of viewers from abroad, as you know. Most of my viewers, you know, this transmits all over the globe. It makes me embarrassed about the kingdom. You know, this is not the kingdom that I knew growing up. You know, this kind of fancy has evolved the last few years. This kingdom was about freedom, you know, hard fought and won for freedoms. And I'm not naive. I understand that behind the scenes, these kind of machinations have always existed and always will exist. I'm not naive about all that, but it's the era, I'm afraid, because we're all part of it too, but it is the era of the internet and the social media mob and the cancel culture mob. That's what it is, my dear. That petrify the world leaders, the thought police, the parliamentarians, the local MPs, that petrify them. And as I've said before, most of these vicious gutter snipers from online, many of them are disturbed individuals, fixated individuals. And I'm sure some of them are very well-meaning individuals, but have got a screw loose or two, and would never have been taken seriously in the past. But now, because they're able to form various online tribes, and stuff, they have more power, and I'm afraid it's going to the wrong people's heads. But with regards to the Magna Carta, clauses 39 and 40 say, "No free man shall be seized, imprisoned, dispossessed, outlawed, exiled, or ruined in any way, nor in any way proceeded against, except by the lawful judgment of his peers and the law of the land." Because Dame Caroline Dinenage has been confettiing, you know, chucking out all of these letters to all the decision makers of social media. They've sent out this letter from Parliament and proudly announced it and trumpeted it from the Parliament website. And I think they might have a bit of a shock, because I glanced at her social media for one thing and was seeing the thousands of replies that she's been getting from people that are from all persuasions, all parties, all political affiliations, outraged by this absolutely indecent intervention, trying to convince, in this case, Rumble, another platform that he's taken to, asking whether or not they're going to be demonetising him. This is a man who may or not be guilty of something, but at this moment in time is innocent in the eyes of the law. And I have no affection for Russell Brand, but I have a great affection for civil liberties, human rights, and I have a deep love for the concept of innocent until proven guilty. This is hideous. And it has to be broached on here. You know, even if I am just one tiny voice, it's a collection of tiny voices that have to speak up against this kind of thing. It's not on. People are calling for Dame Caroline Dinenage to resign, which is very sad because I am not one that likes to meet hysteria with hysteria, and I would normally urge caution. I hate all this resign business. It happens a lot, and one kind of thinks, well, what happens to all of these people that are told to resign? Are they just forming an orderly queue at the job centre so that we then have to pay for their welfare in the future? So, you know, I'm always very hesitant to encourage that kind of thing. I would personally, I would just like her to recognise the fact that she's been egregiously mistaken, that it was obscenely wrong, and to learn from the error of her ways. But in this circumstance, I do understand those that want her out. I do. Because this is really serious stuff. This comes down to the fundamentals of what we stand for as a nation. That's why I say it makes me feel slightly ashamed. This is not the kingdom that I know in my heart, my dear. And having, you know, witnessing decision makers, those who are at the top, if you will, or the periphery, behaving in this way is disappointing, and it's embarrassing as a country that we are being goaded and pushed into this kind of behaviour. Rumble made a statement, a good statement. It was good PR for Rumble, saying that they reject the dangerous demand from Caroline Dinenage. And others have been speaking out about this culture of being told to believe victims. And I've seen a few people say this proudly over the last few years. I believe victims. I always believe victims. Whatever victims say, you believe them. The police have been encouraged to adopt this mentality. No. That is not what a neutral forum is for. It is not to believe victims or believe the accused. It is to listen. It is to listen to potential victims, alleged accusers. It's down to a judge and jury specifically, to throw a word like belief into the arena and decide what they believe and don't believe. We must listen in all earnestness and with all sincerity to potential victims. Absolutely. And we must give the same privilege to those who are accused as well, my dear. We must listen in all earnestness and sincerity to both sides. You don't just believe. I don't know about you, but aren't you fed up hearing these instructions from the new order? Believe victims. You must believe them. Day is night and blue is green. Instructions keep coming forward, and if you don't adhere by these often nonsensical instructions, then it's out. You are cast out. You're demonetized, deplatformed, debanked, dehumanized. It's this insidious creeping of interventions that are policing us. They are policing us. How dare the likes of Dame Caroline Dinenage sit drafting off these notes and letters, apparently on our behalf, from Parliament to various quarters of the land, policing the populace, telling us what we can and can't say and can and can't think, and insisting on training everybody for all kinds of things on gender and diversity. This is what you've got to think about diversity. You've got to think everything's fabulous about it. This is what you've got to think about immigration. This is what you've got to think about my big toe. This is what you've got to think about the colour of my curtains. This is what you've got to think. This is what you've got to think. This is what you've got to say. This is what you've got to think about gender and the gays and the words that describe the gays You know, there is only one opinion to have. It sounds outrageous. It sounds dramatic. But this is what's happening everywhere. It's disgusting. They are policing us instead of policing criminals. Actual criminals. And I am pleased to note the outrage. I am pleased to note the outrage because it's out there. They say you mustn't grumble, but it's fun to have a good old grumble here and there, isn't it, my dear? It's fun. Rather therapeutic. So I'm sure I'll find something else to complain about when I see you next time. And we can all enjoy that. Thank you for joining me. I'm certainly not grumbling about seeing you. It was very nice to do so. See you in the next broadcast. My old fruits. Have a nice evening. Take care. Leave me your fruity thoughts. And my tip jar is in the description box if you fancy treating me to a Singapore sling. Yeah, I thought about reserving this. Well, this isn't some sort of Eastern number, isn't it? I was going to reserve it for the Singapore state visit. But I fancied wearing it today, my fineries. It doesn't look that amazing, does it, on camera? I probably haven't dressed it quite as I could have done, but you know. A different flavour. You've got to play, haven't you, in the dressing box of life, my dear, the dressing up box. Okay, shut up with it. See you next time, and toodle pip.